Okay, everybody, welcome to Accessibility and the Arts panel. So we're very excited. My name is Leticia Latino. I'm a board member of the South Beach Jazz Festival. I'm also the host of the Back to Basics podcast, among other things. I've been honored to be hosting this conversation. This is the third year already. And all of our conversations, if you haven't seen the prior ones, you can always go to our webpage and see it and check it out there. So we're very excited. The festival starts today. So we have 4 days ahead of us of jazz and music and community all over South Beach tonight with the Faena concert. But most important thing is why we're here today, and it's just to exchange ideas, brainstorm. We're going to have 5 minutes at the end of this discussion for the audience to ask questions. So if you have any questions, please write it on the chat and I'll make sure to address it. If you're not on the panel, I will ask you to mute yourself and also to turn off your camera so that we can focus on our panelists today. And with that, I'm very welcome. I'm going to name them all. They all going to have a chance to, of course, talk more about what they do. But I'm pleased to welcome David New, who's the founder of the South Beach Jazz Festival. We have Izzi Guzman. She's a musician, educator, photographer. She's also South Beach Jazz Festival past scholarship winner. Very excited to have her here. We have Silvia Riorda, who's the Director of Vocational Services at Goodwill, South Florida. Valeria Mejia, she's an ADA manager at the City of Miami Beach. Janice Lintz, CEO, founder Hearing Access and Innovations, and Gabriel Lopez, who is the Director of the Office of Accessibility Services at Barrow University. What all of them have in common, like me, is that they all work tirelessly to break down barriers, to raise awareness, and improve the quality of life of people with disabilities. And to live in a world where we really forget about, who we are in terms of our limitations or how we engage with the world. So I'm very excited to have you all here. Welcome. And I'm going to start, of course, my first question is going to be with David, because he's the founder of this incredible initiative. And David, Power Access is known for its commitment to inclusivity in the arts. Why don't you share with us and the audience the mission and vision you have for Power Access and for the South Beach Jazz Festival, and really what's the broader goal of accessibility in the arts?
Leticia, thank you so much for all your hard work and efforts. I really appreciate how you pull this all together. Every year you work so hard, and I just want to thank you for that. I also want to thank all of our panelists and everybody participating on Zoom today. We really are happy that you're here, and we have a great program for all of you. As far as the South Beach Jazz Festival goes, I started it 9 years ago to create awareness about people living with disabilities and to create opportunities for those people as well. And when I say that, I mean that there are many, many people who are talented with disabilities, not only in our community, but around the world, and they deserve to have an equal showcase as everyone else. We create an atmosphere of accessibility in our staging, in our events planning, in our inclusiveness. We try to provide all kinds of assistive technology for people who may need it. And anybody who enjoys the sound of jazz and music is always welcome. The greater mission of the organization is to create opportunities in all of the arts, in theater productions, in dance, in opera, in musicals, in museums and exhibits. We want all of the arts to be more accessible for everyone. And I really feel that today, with the technology that's available to so many so easily, that we are really at a great place to do that. And we are implementing many of those technologies today. Thank you.
great, David. I mean, so inspirational as somebody that has been involved with the organization. And not that I want to give a plug, but David also shared his journey on my podcast, and it's really inspirational to see how you know embrace a very difficult and challenging situation into doing good for the world. So, and of course, the city of Miami Beach is a key component of being able to have this festival. And we are very grateful for the city and its availability. And with that, to you, Valeria, who really have done so much. As the ADA manager for the city and a key member of the accessibility committee, you oversee accessibility for events like the one that started today. Could you highlight some of the challenges, key initiatives, and improvements in Miami Beach regarding accessibility at special events and beyond?
Thank you, Leticia, and thank you everyone for being here. As the ADA manager, I review all special events that are open to the public and in public facilities or in the outdoors. So it may not be applicable to this specific event, but I would say the biggest challenge to me in my role, and I've been with the city for almost 11 years, is our beach and access to the beach and all the events that happen at the beach. Because if you look at the codes, they would tell you for events, you choose an accessible facility, or if it's not accessible, you make it accessible. So the beach is not accessible, so we cannot tell them like not to use the beach is our biggest asset. So I need to be reasonable and work with our event producers in finding a way to provide reasonable access that works for both the community and the event producer, so we can continue to have events at the beach. I generally look for reasonable is like the similar options that any member of the public would have, having access to all the different amenities. And generally our hardscape spaces, like spaces on Lincoln Road where we have the South Beach Jazz Festival and other similar spaces, they wouldn't be as challenging. But of course, we want to make sure we have the routes and the access and as equal as possible to everyone else.
You don't have an easy job. It's definitely one of the things on a city like Miami Beach, where there's so much going on. And part of what we want to do with this conversation is just broaden, the perspective that we all get, because it is true that if we don't have somebody with a disability in our lives, maybe many of these things don't even cross to our mind. But then when we are made aware of these challenges, then we can do more as a community to advocate for all these things. So I really admire the work that you do. It must not be easy.
Thank you. It's good to stay engaged with the community and hear from the community. I know David for many years. He provides great feedback. He brings ideas and initiatives so that we can have the discussion and sometimes implement. So it's key to stay connected to the community.
Absolutely. And that's part of what we try to recreate in this conversation. We invited panelists a little bit from different angles. So it's great to have a representative from the city and David as a nonprofit, doing this kind of work. And now, we have Silvia here, who's the director of vocational services at Goodwill, Florida. And for those of us familiar with Goodwill, we think many things about Goodwill, but even for myself, when I learned that they have a band, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, and other initiatives, it's very inspirational. And so I know, Silvia, that you describe yourself as the HR for people with disabilities. Could you elaborate on your role, as well as some of the challenges and successes you've encountered in fostering greater employment and opportunities for them?
Yes, hi, good afternoon. Thank you again for inviting us, to participate in this panel. And for us, it's an honor to be able to talk a little bit about what we do, because like you say, most of us are known by the stores, but really what is behind the stores is that what is Goodwill about, that is to train and employ people with disabilities, train them, to become employed in our community. So, and what we really do is that hire them, and through works that we secure with the government, with our state. So we teach them how to become good employers, good employees, and then we become their employer. So I'm in charge of the group of psychologists that are assigned to each person with disabilities that work for Goodwill. And we work hand in hand, every day with them and their supervisors. So making sure that they are learning what they're supposed to be doing in their job, that they're performing, that their attendance is good, if they have any personal or family issues or issues at work. So that's each of the counselors, help them to resolve them. And little by little, we bring them into a competitive level. The ideal scenario is that one day we have a placement department that it help them, to find jobs later on in the community. So that's why, I can define, my department like the human resources for people with disability, because that's really what we do. We have we have our regular human resources department that takes care mainly of people without disability that work for Goodwill. And we are in charge of the well-being of the people with disability working inside Goodwill. We have over 900 people working. So we are one of the largest employer of people with disabilities. So we are proud of the accomplishment that we do. We serve thousands of people every year. We have a lot of not only the employment section, but we have the training, and we have an adult day training. That's how the band born years ago inside the adult day training program that is specifically for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we have, like I said, several programs, and but the main one is the one that employ people with disability. That's the largest one. We had several contracts in the community. We had our largest is our apparel manufacturing that is in-house. And when you come, that's when people say, wow, what is this? Because it's a huge building with more like 800 sewing machines working at the same time, manufacturing apparel for the military. And then we have about 30-something contracts in the community, cleaning the federal building, most of the buildings in downtown, we clean them. The Miami Police Headquarters, the Air Force bases in Homestead and Opaloka, and several other custodial contracts, and all of them with people with disabilities. So those are the kind of things that we use to train them to become, excellent employees, and then we can place them outside.
Wow, that's what a great example of doing good while doing what's needed to be done, like manufacturing goods, and it's just very, very inspirational. So let me move on to somebody that in this panel that will have incredible perspective, because Izzi, you have a dual journey, so to speak. So let's focus on you as a student. Your journey as a jazz trombonist brings a unique perspective. Could you share some of the struggles you face along the way, particularly as somebody that has had to deal with a disability in really reaching the highest realms of your musical career?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the biggest thing that I've faced, not just as a musician, but as a person, is doubt. And doubt from not only other people, but myself. I was born with ocular albinism. I'm legally blind, and that makes it more difficult for me to read sheet music. And I didn't realize until I was probably in third grade what that means, what it means to have this disability that impacts my vision, what it means to be legally blind. And so when you have a disability, especially one that's a little less known than some other disabilities, it can feel isolating, because I didn't know anyone else with my disability until I went to a conference in 2016 when I was 12 years old, where I met thousands of people that had albinism at the National Organization for Albinism and Hypopigmentation conference. And as far as music, I would say there's I've definitely found a more welcoming environment now at the University of Miami, and I found a very supportive community. But when I was in middle school and when I was in high school, there was definitely a lot of external doubt from other people in my ensemble, where I would actually hear people say behind my back something along the lines of, how could she be first chair in the band? She can't even read the music. You know, just statements like that where people doubt my abilities as a musician, even though they don't even know the full scope of my disability and they don't know the full scope of my abilities. So I think that for us to truly accept individuals with disabilities, the first step really is not only seeing the disability, but also seeing the ability of what we can do. Because even though I'm legally blind, I have perfect pitch. A lot of people have told me that my visual impairment, I don't know if it's something in the brain, but it might have strengthened my hearing and my ears, you know? So I'm very blessed with really great ears that I can identify pitches and music completely by ear. So a lot of times I don't even need to read sheet music. So it's finding those small gifts that I have and finding that community of other people with disabilities around the country and also around the Miami area has really helped me to feel more included and seen. And it's helped me gain a lot of self-confidence, especially during my college years when I've had to advocate for myself. I had a hard time with that when I was younger. I had to advocate for extended time on tests and other accommodations that I needed in the classroom. But now as a college student and as a professional musician, I have to carry myself out there and like show the world, right, that even with my eyesight, even with my visual impairment, that you know I can still carry myself on a gig. And I think that I've been really successful in doing that thanks to finding a great community and having better confidence in myself over the years that I've discovered myself and how I can accommodate myself in my disability.
And the power that those words have. And I mean, we're going to talk about your advocacy later, but anybody that doubted you, that will see you on Sunday perform in Lincoln Road on stage. I mean, and you're an incredible musician. And if you're in Miami Beach, I really encourage you to go check out both the Goodwill Band, which we'll also talk about, and Izzi perform in Lincoln Road. Those are free events. So very inspirational, Izzi. I love how you put everything, like how people focus on the bad and not on the good. It's something, I think it's a human flaw. And the more we highlight it, like you just did, it's very powerful. So I think it's a perfect segue to go to Gabriel, because you are the director of the Office of Accessibility Services at Barry University. And based on Izzi's story about, you know, how hard it is to really making sure as a student that you reach your full potentials. So can you share some specific examples of how your work has impacted students with disability, or what Barry University is doing in this front?
Absolutely. Thank you, Leticia. And I first want to start by thanks for the introduction. As Leticia said, my name is Gabriel Lopez Cafati. I just want to give a quick description. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a young-looking, middle 40s, handsome gentleman, shaved head, cropped beard, and I am wearing a pair of glasses. I have a red Barry University sweatshirt with a hoodie, and the handsome part was fun. Was just for fun. To address your question, Leticia, we're doing so many things. I always like to say that nowadays, universities and colleges, every institution that provides higher education in this country, by law, has to have an Office of Disability Services. But I go much further than just a mere compliance. I believe in accessibility services as leveling the playing field and providing the tools that everyone needs. I think there is a lot of talk about diversity today, and it is great. However, diversity also goes much beyond than just the simple numbers. It is also a way in which we bring those diverse perspectives of others into the mix. So in order to embrace the perspective of others in a higher education setting and allow them for the opportunity to enjoy all the services, the classes, the facilities in an equal manner, we need to provide that different set of tools, because we're all different, we're all diverse, so we all need different types of tools to access information or to engage in different programs, whether it be academics, sports, fun. And one of the things that has impacted the life of students here at Barry is that openness and that perspective of embracing everyone's diversity and everyone's differences. And not as something that will mark what we're able or unable to do, but more of how we do things. It's all different. So for example, our students who have learning disabilities, we provide with accommodations in terms of modification, which, up to the point that they won't alter any of the substantial academic elements of a program. If we have a visually impaired student, we provide screen readers, braille, transcription, large print, magnification, and different types of format that are better suited for the needs of someone with a visual impairment. Sign language interpretation in classes, closed captioning for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. We have also have a strong emphasis on removing physical barriers and making sure that all of our areas are accessible for anyone with any type of mobility needs, whether it be a wheelchair, whether it be someone who uses a cane, whether it be someone who has arthritis. We try to plan for everyone to make sure that we accommodate. And whenever we are not addressing something that, for example, someone comes in with something that we had not been able to anticipate, we are always open to a conversation. I think dialogue is what helps us, just go across differences and make sure that we're all on the same plane. Same thing applies to digital environments. Nowadays, digital environments are equally, if not more important than physical environments. And that goes to every aspect of education, whether it be attending a class, a lecture, making sure that our learning management systems are accessible. And that is part of what I'm working on constantly, is checking for accessibility, making sure it's not just about complying with, for example, World Consortium accessibility guidelines, but more about making sure that we are providing a good experience, an equal experience to all of our students. And we never know, by making sure that all of our environments are accessible, you never know who you're benefiting, because some people may have disabilities that they haven't discovered, and they just don't understand why probably they feel more comfortable with, black background and white letters versus a, typical white background with black letters. So all of those things are the day-to-day activities that we ensure here at Barry, and myself in my personal life, that we maintain that approach, that we need to be prepared to handle the different abilities and the different needs of people so that they can excel and that they can be a equal part. Equality is a huge part of everything, making sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to participate in everything they want or have to participate in, whether it be academic, fun, sports, and even leisure. So I think I gave you a long answer to what we do, but I'll stop right there.
And that's what we're here for. And it's very just interesting to learn all the aspects. And that's why I love, we hear it from all the perspectives. So from university point of view, it's also, it's also challenging to provide that to deliver the promise of equal experience is not easy. So just the fact that there is that intention, I think that's making great progress. So let me move on to Janice, and I'm going to give her extra credit because she's on vacation right now in Brazil, and so she accepted this invitation. I'm very grateful for that to take a break of your awesome vacation, Janice. But and we've known each other. I've admired the work she's done. You've been a leading advocate for the deaf and hard of hearing communities, both domestically and internationally. But I know, because you've also been on my podcast, that your advocacy started with a deeply personal experience. Could you share that with our audience and also, how it shaped your work in the accessibility field?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on this esteemed panel. So I started because I have a daughter with a hearing loss. And when she was diagnosed, the doctor immediately told me there were special schools for her. And the idea of special schools, what she thought was special and what I thought was special, were two different specials. And my daughter's experience was similar to Izzi's. She ended up going to 2 Ivy League schools, and I thought those were very special, but I don't think that's what the doctor had in mind. And I decided that it was ridiculous that the doctor had already lowered the bar for her at age 2.5 based on a prescription on a pad. And it was easier to change the world than to change my expectations for how our family was going to live the life. And I was consistently frustrated by the lack of access for people who are hard of hearing and the perception that people who are hard of hearing use sign language, which they didn't, that they should read captions rather than hear sounds. And it was exasperating. And as you mentioned, I'm in Brazil and I'm traveling to every country in the world. I'm at over 163 countries. And I would see the access in other countries. And it was frustrating because I couldn't understand why the US was so behind. I also, when I was in other countries, didn't understand why I would see the access in parts of a museum, but not in other parts. So I was just in London and filed complaints because, for example, the Royal Observatory had it in one section, but not another section, or rides would have it. And you would see this even at Apple. Apple would have access in London based on, I'm not sure why, but not in the US. And the signs would be wrong. And so I decided to create a global best practice standard to ensure that the full spectrum of hearing loss was met, not just the perception of what you could see, the visible, such as captions and sign language, which benefit people who are either deaf for sign language, which is not hard of hearing, or captions, which benefit people who are wearing hearing aids, or someone where hearing aids no longer work, or someone who's deaf, but also the third prong of assistive listening systems and making sure that those were installed. And then even going a step further, not just assistive listening systems, but systems where people don't have to wear a device that's stigmatizing and called induction loops. And I have it in the taxi behind me, one of the projects I did, which was copied off of London, and now Azerbaijan and Spain have it as well. And that shows the inconsistency, but people don't think that people should hear sound. It's not perceived as a serious disability. And that when they do, then it's okay to make them wear a device that basically is like a neon sign, I have a disability. And people won't use access, and access that's not used is not access. So I've worked on that, and I've worked in many countries around the world with many heads of state and various government agencies. And it's my passion and purpose. And as I'm traveling now, I'm continuing to file complaints, as we'll talk as my last question, and explain how it works. And I document all the access I see using photographs. So if anybody ever sees photographs of induction loop signs with the ear with the T, please send them to me showing the context, because it really helps my advocacy.
Well, fascinated. I just love, in terms of your own journey, how something so local and personal to you. You just made your entire life out of it, and you're making impact like everybody else here is, just by doing, like raising awareness, doing what's right. So I really admire that. And I know, David, that you kind of, you're expanding the boundaries of what you're doing, because I mean, tomorrow the festival will take place at the Bass Museum. And if you haven't gone before, I really highly suggest you do. There's a VIP section, there's a free section. You can do like picnic style. I know we're going to a little bit of a chilly front, but what's better than sitting on the grass and listening to good music? But we also have the opportunity to visit the gallery tour. There will be 2 tours of the Bass Museum tomorrow at 6 and 7. But the question for you, David, is I know you've been working closely with the museum to make it more accessible. I know you're an artist too. So can you tell us more about the changes and improvements that have been made for visitors on the museum on this front?
Yes, I've been working closely with the museum and also with Valeria Mejia from the Disability Access Committee, of which I've been a member for many years, as well as through Power Access and another nonprofit that I run called Access Now. And I presented the museum administration with about a dozen different accessible technologies and modalities for possible implementation in the museum about a year ago. Well, it was before the summer, actually. And many of the commissioners and the mayor attended that presentation, as well as the director of the museum and other employees. And my goal was, because I have my education is based in fine art, and I've always had an appreciation for it as well as creating it. And I wanted this museum, which is only a few blocks from where I live, to be more accessible for me and others like me. So when I presented them with all these different ideas, they actually were very responsive and have begun to implement several of them. For example, Bloomberg Connects app is an app that is used worldwide for museums, events, and tours. And any museum can apply to be a part of this Bloomberg Connects app. And in the app, you are able to add any information about exhibits. You can give audio tours of the museum, of the exhibits, of the art, interviews with the artists. It's very extensive, and they actually worked on it all summer, and it became live just this past December. So I encourage everybody to go to the Bloomberg Connects app and look up the Bass Museum of Art in Miami Beach, and it will take you on a tour and give you very descriptive information on the exhibits. Now, I also let them know about AI is being used for description of photographs and all things. And so I had them use an app called Be My Eyes to take a photograph of art and images and a very detailed description of that art is automatically presented, and those descriptions are included in the Bloomberg Connects app, as well as in other forms of media. I am thrilled with the collaboration with the museum and the city of Miami Beach and myself. There are many other things that we've been working on. I know that I went there and I never saw the building, and I wanted to get an idea of the architecture. So I asked them if they had a model of the building, like an architectural model, which they did, and they've had it in storage for many years. And I asked them to bring it up to the main floor and make it available to people who are blind or visually impaired to touch, to understand the architecture of the building and how it's laid out and where they are in that scenario. So they have accommodated that request as well. And there are many other things that they're working on that we're working on together. And I'm really thrilled that they've been so responsive. And I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. I learn a ton every time I would do this, and I just get, more encouraged. And I know that you mentioned, David, you've been working with Valeria directly on this, and I know that Valeria, you've been involved with other groups to help them improve accessibility. So what, in your view, are the essential elements for creating a successful ADA program in cultural spaces?
I think something that's really important, and it's not just for cultural institutions, but for any organization, agency, is to, I make it like two main points. One, get the feedback from the actual community. So every time I have a chance with any organization in or around Miami Beach, I tell them about the Disability Access Committee and how all the different members, like this panel, they focus on different aspects of the disability or accessibility. And I suggest they bring questions and they present projects if they want to get the feedback from the actual community, which is the intended user in terms of accessibility. So one is the feedback from the community and focus groups like the Disability Access Committee. And the other approach that I rely on a lot and recommend everyone to do is networking with people like we are doing now that have the knowledge or the experience in a similar path that we are all in. So I reach out to other municipalities, I reach out to specialized agencies where I can learn success stories or new ideas, or like David mentioned earlier, new technologies, because every time it's evolving, anything that we can use. So the networking, the communication with both the communities, the community, or and the networking with agencies that are maybe in your same line of work to learn from what they're doing.
I love that. And a little bit of I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what's your feeling on, I know, for example, for inclusion and diversity, right? I advocate a lot for that. And you see a lot of people checking boxes and say, yeah, we do it. And you check the box and you move on. How much do you feel like we're making progress? Because I know a lot of these programs maybe, try to find compliance, as Gabriel mentioned. What's your feeling?
I think there is progress. However, progress happens at the same time that you are pushing for it. So I think that if we just lay back and wait for it, progress does not move as fast. So I had, for instance, just as an example, I had a conversation with the Miami Beach Chamber of Commerce, who oversees the hospitality industry, so hotels and restaurants, and they have a council that's called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. And one conversation is, what do you see as accessibility? And most of us probably know that people think of the wheelchair, right? Like just access to wheelchairs. So I try to make it a point to point at the other disabilities that mean something very different. So, an accessible hotel is not the same thing for a person in a wheelchair than for a person that's blind, for instance. So that's where progress can happen. If we continue to have conversations, if we continue to educate, if we continue to be part of the conversation and bring the right people to the table. So progress is happening. And again, going back to David's point, technology helps a lot, and we should continue to use it and hope for its development. But then the work cannot stop for more progress.
Great perspective. Thank you, Valeria. So Silvia, I've been advertising now the Goodwill band. I know you're known as the manager, and they're playing at 11:30, I believe, on Sunday on Lincoln Road. Yeah. Could you tell us about this unique initiative, how it came about, and how it's evolved to the success it is today?
Yes, sure. As I mentioned to you, Goodwill has several programs, all with the same goal of train and find employment for people with disabilities. So one of the programs, as I mentioned before, is our adult day training. These are individuals that are referred to us by usually the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. And one of the goals is that we give them a living skills, you know, bring them up to as much independence in their life that we can through, you know, and then is, if it's possible, you know, is they have the skills to prepare them for employment. So part of what we train over there is also social skills and recreational skills, because a lot of them do not need to learn also how to rest, you know, because it's not life is not only about work, but you also need to, you know, have some kind of recreation. So that's how really started the band. It started first with a choir. This is you know, like 40 years ago, you know, we have a choir instructors and part of the recreation program. She teach them some songs, you know, and it was like a part of the social skills. You know, they can get out from the training area and participate. And but then well, little by little, you know, and we hire a new, when she left, we hire a new choir director, but it just happened that he also played instruments. So he starts seeing that this individual have not only the ability to, you know, to sing, but also a lot of them were interested in instruments. So he started adding instruments little by little, identifying, you know, some of their skills and adding instruments until it has evolved to having 14 musicians with 14 different areas. So, you know, we have some that plays the piano, the trombone, someone that's still in choir, trumpet, team, the drums. So we had little by little has been identifying what is their desire to learn, because they also are taught here, you know, to play the instruments, and what is their gift is. So one of the things that we learn, because the journey with the band has been a learning experience for us, because this, you know, like I was listening to Izzi, and it is true, you know, sometimes people don't see what is the gift that the people have, you know, when they are labeled with a condition, you know, people tends to go and work around the condition, but they don't see behind what is, you know, all the strengths of the person and what is that. And it just happened that a lot of them have, you know, have been gifted with other areas in their body, like you know, very acute to the sound. We have members in the band that they don't need to be taught the music that they're going to play. Just by hearing, they start, you know, playing the timbales or playing the drums, because they have this natural gift. So we had learned that we need to identify those gifts and match them with the instrument where those gifts can be really, you know, expanded. So most of these, 90% of the people in the band are employers and Goodwill, employees, I'm sorry, in Goodwill. And but we give them the opportunity during the work day to come to the band, to learn, to practice. And that has been a perfect combination, still the perfect combination of mixing, you know, your gift with your work skills, and one complement the other, because when they feel that they are success, you know, in the gift that they have, natural gift, they give more into the things that are a little bit more difficult to them in the employment section. So it, like I say, has been an incredible journey learning from them and identifying, you know, how they can blossom more and more in the areas of music. So now they are becoming, you know, more and more famous, let's say, people have usually that come to Goodwill, they want to see the band, they have practice, and a lot of people tour Goodwill, and it just happened that they come in when they're practicing, and then immediately, are amazed, of how beautiful music they play, and they say, oh, we want them to come and people see, how, the abilities that they have, and change the perception, of people with disabilities into with abilities. And to tell you the truth, they have evolved because their skills. So they are the ones that have made the band more and more successful. It's their skills that really have shown and developed. We just, guiding, and making sure that all their needs are met. That's the part of us as as counselor, or me as a manager, is they're going to have a performance, make sure that everything that they need is covered, that that they're safe, that they're happy, that they're well fed. But really they are the ones that have made this band what they are is right now, and what is to come, because I think there will have more and more success.
Absolutely. I think when more people see them play, starting, like Sunday will be a great opportunity, then you'd really realize like, wow, like,
Yes.
because there's also that perception that you hear, this is a show, a performance with people from disability, and people discount what the quality of that show. We spoke about this at length last year, because we had Karen Patterson, who has a dance school, and it's incredible, because then you see the show and it blows you away, and then you're like, oh my God, this is really good. So thank you for that. So Izzi, now let's change in roles from you going through your journey of becoming a successful musician to now you're an educator, you're an advocate, you are involved in many initiatives. What can you share of the work you're doing with the audience?
Yeah, I would love to. I think the biggest and honestly the first step that I've taken towards becoming an advocate as a musician and as an educator is to be transparent with my audience. I have a couple thousand followers on social media, and with that, even though it's not 1 million followers, I want to use the follower base that I have to share information about my disabilities and to be transparent about it, so that that's one step at a time. We can break down the barriers of stigma and open up the conversation to talk about disabilities in a way that's that shares the entire experience of people with disabilities, and again, in a way that isn't stigmatizing. So for Disability Pride Month, I shared a post explaining, this is how my disability affects my music making, but these are all the things that I can do too. But here are all the things that make me different. And both the good things and the difficult things are all things to be celebrated, because that's what makes us different. If we all had perfect vision, perfect hearing, perfect mobility, that would be kind of boring, right? We wouldn't be that much different. And as an educator, I really do my best to share that message to my students. I used to be the student that was afraid to even disclose that I had a disability. Like I was ashamed of it, because as I mentioned earlier, I had so much doubt. I didn't think that I would really achieve much. Like I had no idea that I could play an instrument or do advanced things in school or anything like that. But now that I've been able to see that it really is possible, and that our disabilities don't define us, I really try to be as open with my students as I can, even in the little things, saying stuff like, I can't really see this music that well. Can you guys tell me what measure we're at? To create that collaborative environment for the students and I to work together, I think is one of the biggest things that has helped me as an educator. So that way I don't have to hide it from them, because I think hiding my disability doesn't do anyone any favors. because it makes life harder for me and it can make other people confused. So by, I don't have to share the entire story of my life from a disability with all the students I teach, but even the little things like, hey, if you raise your hand and you're sitting in the back, I might have a hard time seeing you. Like, just let me, if I miss you when you raise your hand, like say my name or something like that, as a way for my students to know that, okay, like this, my teacher's being honest with me. She's saying that, she might have some difficulty with some things, and now I know, right? So that there's less confusion. And also in the realm of education, one of the biggest joys that I've been able to experience is helping other students with disabilities become their own advocates. I worked at the Lighthouse in Central Florida 2 years ago during the summer. It was right before my senior year of college, and I was a youth services instructor. I primarily worked with teenagers, age 14 to 17. There were some that were a little bit older, but they were all students that hadn't started college yet. And pretty much all of these students are on individualized education plans, just like I was when I was in high school. And a lot of them, confided in me and shared their doubts that they had in themselves. Maybe some of them had teachers that didn't fully believe in them, or guidance counselors that wouldn't put them in advanced classes because they didn't think they were capable because of their disability. And I think by sharing my story with them and being honest and encouraging to them, that I hope I was able to help them have a bit more light in their future and to have that confidence that I wanted for so long when I was their age in high school, so that when they leave that program and they're on their own in college or in the workforce, they can be their own advocate and advocate for what they need. They can be confident for themselves, and they can realize that, yes, a disability limits things. It is tough, and there are lots of challenging moments, and there's a lot of progress to still be made. But here are all the things that I can do right now. It's, there definitely is a light at the tunnel. At least that's what I've seen personally. And again, I think my work with those students has really helped me go back to my roots and realize, like, this is how I was feeling so many years ago. And, I think it really helps them to have a role model of someone who has the same disability or similar disability that they have, to be able to relate to them. And I'm really happy that I was able to have that experience and impact them in a positive way.
Well, they're very lucky. Your students, or any student, will be very lucky to have an empowering educator, because I think that's what makes the difference. And so I think that you're making some important impact. And so, Gabriel, talking about that student, and we know that last year we also touched upon the integration of the communities. When is it going to be that we are not even going to think about if this is somebody with a disability, this is somebody that doesn't have a disability? So based on your experience, you see students day in and day out. Do you believe that true integration can eventually be achieved, that this is something that we really start not paying too much attention and in creating that equality you described before?
Absolutely, I do believe that that is possible. I think it all starts with an idea, and the idea of integration has so many components behind it. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility I see as the main components of that whole integration. And just like we, have evolved as a human society into not paying attention, how different cultures, different races, different ages coexist and live happily together in the same household or in the same city, in the same neighborhood. That's the same progress that I see needs to happen with integration in terms of accessibility. And the way in which I see that also happening is, first of all, being very intentional about it, not just letting it happen by coincidence or, you have to give nature a little bit of a push. And that is only achieved through having that intention of making things happen and being very, very aware, and making sure that we also start paying attention to things that seem small, but at the end have a huge impact, like language. I like to talk here and at work and in my personal life. I like to talk about embracing rather than accepting, because accepting is like you're doing me a favor by accepting me. Embracing is actually you value what I bring to the table, and not regardless, but actually because of my disability, I bring a different perspective that is valuable, that is gonna add a huge value proposition to what we do as a society, what I do here at Barry as an educator or as an education institution, what I do in other areas of my life, what all of us do in different aspects, whether it be personal, professional, cultural. We bring that extra perspective, and that is something that people will have to learn to be intentional about in order to reach that full integration. I have actually come up with a little formula that has some elements, and I try to keep it in mind in everything I do. And I believe it's a formula that starts, like I said, with the idea of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and it has some steps that I like to call the AAA, which are awareness, alliance, and advocacy. So awareness, the first thing is to make sure that we are aware of our surrounding, make sure that we are aware of those around us, and notice the differences, and notice how we can learn from those differences, and notice how we can build bridges rather than put up barriers to those differences, and make sure that we elevate our activities, our actions, our words to a level where we're all kind of getting past those differences. But that, those differences cannot be overcome if we're not able to have that awareness of our environment, have that awareness, especially the awareness on what everyone brings to the table, what everyone is capable of doing in a different way, but also in a way in which we all learn from each other. The alliance is, it speaks by itself, is doing things as a group, as a collective entity, and not just trying to be so individualistic where, we see everyone fighting for something very, very personal, very individual. It's good to do that. It's good to be empowered, and I believe in being being a go-getter, but not without considering that we need others around us as much as they need us. So those alliances are crucial for us and for them. And advocacy, I having been visually impaired all my life, and now completely blind, I have gone through steps in my life where I've used no accommodations to some accommodations to different accommodations, been from large print to braille to screen readers. So I do have that connection and that way in which I perceive the world through the lens of advocacy. I started off working with David many years ago, and have into so many different directions. Right now, I'm part of the board of directors of the American Council of the Blind. And one of the things that we focus on is advocacy, because if we have awareness and we have alliances, but we don't have advocacy, things, again, go back to the intentionality. We're not going to be able to achieve those things that we need for our community and for others with disabilities or different abilities if we don't advocate, if we're not vocal about it, and if we don't make sure that other environments like state, local, federal environments or regulated environments are inclusive of persons with disabilities, we are not going to be able to get that environment that we need to all thrive. And that formula obviously has to have a goal, because if we don't have a goal, if we don't have a north, it's kind of like aimlessly going around. I believe that goal to reach integration is called universal design. Once we all have a full understanding of what universal design is and what universal design entails, and how universal design can impact the lives of all of us, we're not going to understand that. I'm sorry, I have an incoming call. We're not going to understand that that if we plan for just the norm, we're not going to get anywhere. We need to plan with variability in mind, making sure that we consider everyone's diverse needs, everyone's different abilities, and everyone's different ways of doing things in order to get successful results. And again, that collective perspective of, the success of one of us is the success of all of us. So in my role, for example, here at Barry, to me, to experience the graduation of my students means the success of my department, my success, and the success of my institution. So again, that universal design approach where we benefit all the variables, all the persons with different variabilities, with different accessibility needs, is a world in which we plan for everyone's success.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Gabriel. So
Thank you.
empowering. So I know it's a great conversation. So I want to encourage you all to check the chats. We are on time. I have one more question for Janice before we move on, because I don't want to have you here longer than expected. It's 3 o'clock. If you have any questions, please put it on the chat. So if we cannot tackle it today, we for sure get back to you, but I'm going to try to tackle at least one question. But Janice, I mean, I'm thinking what better way to wrap up this conversation when your advocacy journey started from being a concerned parent to receiving congressional recognition for the advocacy you have done. You really have activated at a broader level in DC. What key lessons can we take away from your journey to continue advancing the mission and to inspire those of us that maybe have not really embarked on that full advocacy role that Gabriel was talking about, and that can inspire us to do more of that?
I would say, thank you so much. I would say that there's a few things. One, I think the biggest takeaway, and I think it's been mentioned many times, but is understanding that when we're discussing disabilities, one person with one disability knows their disability, and they may not know other disabilities. And there is this perception that one person with one disability can effectively implement access for all the disabilities. And I think that's really a falsehood, because the person who advocates and works for physical access tends to be an architect or engineer. The person who does visual tends to be in software. The person who does cognitive and mental tends to be psychology. And the person who works in hearing access tends to be an attorney, because it's defining effective communication. Finding one person that does all that is very difficult. And I think it's very critical to have advisory boards that are well balanced with different disabilities, and not combining blind with vision impaired and deaf with hard of hearing, because each of those are very different disabilities and they can kind of get lumped together, but they're really separate disabilities. So one thing I would recommend is creating advisory boards that are well representative and making sure the person actually knows about their disability. I remember being in one advisory board and the person had a hearing loss and was a political appointee and really had no idea even how to work their own hearing aids. And that was a little terrifying. So the person really has to be an expert. I think also using global best practices and realizing that what's going on in the United States, the US is really behind on disability access, very behind. When you walk, go around the world, you will see raised bumps like in metro stations for vision impairment in many countries. I'm in Brazil, it's in Brazil. every place you see the raised bumps, yet you see the raised bumps for vision impaired in very few places in the US. The same for hard of hearing. So I think it's imperative that we start taking a more global perspective and seeing what are other countries doing? Why are we just focusing on the US? And let's look at global best practices and see what they're doing. And I think when you take this advisory group combined with global best practices, it will then become more than just tick the box, because for many places, it really is exactly like you said, Letitia. It's tick the box. How do we get the lawyers off of us? How do we just write, my favorite thing is when someone says we're accessible. No place in the United States is accessible. It's an impossible achievement. How do we get more accessible? And how do we become accessible for all the disabilities, not just having a physical accessible bathroom and ramp into the, let's say, the museum, but how do we make sure that there is all the disabilities have access, and how do we stop lumping disabilities together and separate them out so that they get what they need, not what the person who's in charge of disability access thinks they need. And I think advocating for that is critical and will help solve this and go a long way. And by the way, anyone who needs help, please reach out to me. I am very happy to help. I failed to mention, I posted in the chat, but I worked with the Miami Bass Museum, and the Education Center has induction loops. And, I'm happy to help anyone who's listening to this that needs assistance.
Thank you, Janice, for that. I know you're very available. I also put my email on the chat. So if you need to connect with anybody in the panel, have additional questions, please email me and make sure that you're all connected. This is show that when you're talking about these subjects, we could, keep talking and talking because there's so much information here. But again, I want to be very respectful of our panelists. They are all incredible. There are some of them very busy. Some of them are enjoying a well-deserved vacation. So for all of you that dial in, thank you so